Production funding for Ruckus has been provided by gifts from Dave and Jamie Cummings, the Fred and Lou Hartwig family, Peter and Barbara Gattermeyer, the Courtney S. Turner Charitable Trust, John H. Mize, and Bank of America N.A. co-trustees, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to Ruckus, our weekly food for thought fight over the news of the day and the trends of the times. I'm Mike Shannon. The Ruckettes join me shortly. Our topics this week: Kansas City voters pick a new mayor, the Kansas Supreme Court decides not to pick a fight, and a fight over a busted system at the Jackson County Jail, plus roast and toast. But we're going to start with our Newsmaker segment and look at some of the issues facing the Kansas legislature, and there's no shortage of those. Joining me is State Senator David Haley from Wyandotte County. Haley, a Democrat, represents the 4th District and has been in the Senate since 2001. Prior to that, he served in the State House. Haley, an attorney, is also a member of a famous American family. His father, George, was a politician and international diplomat, and his uncle, Alex, was a Pulitzer Prize winner, the author of the best-selling book and subsequent television series, Roots. Senator David Haley, welcome to Ruckus. Great to see you again, sir.
It's great to be back. Thank you, Mike.
We're both Wyandotte Countyans, so as we begin, tell me how you think Kansas City, Kansas, and Wyandotte County are getting along. We're now in the 3rd decade of consolidation.
We are, and certainly there have been some benefits that consolidation has yielded. We have seen that there is an ease and not the discord that was seen in the former county city governments, and that acrimony that's often seen even in other county city governments. So in terms of having that ability, we've moved forward. There are still some remaining questions, as you know, being one of our most famous Wyandotte Countyans now, and that is—
That's why you're a guest, you know.
That our bonding, we're concerned about our bonding. We look at some of our more stellar economic drivers and what their longevity might be. And we're concerned also about representation at the local level, where we have the representation where people are not able to be heard because they have an in-district and an at-large representative. And sometimes those two are, well, collude.
We have a county commissioner instead of a city government, city council. Let's talk about the school finance decision rendered by the state Supreme Court last week. Mm-hmm. The court finally said the spending was sufficient for K-12 education. Are you satisfied with the outcome?
Well, certainly we're pleased with the governor now Governor Kelly, to be able to do that, working with is often a contentious legislature. We still have many, certainly in the Senate and in the House, that did not want to see the Gannon decision resolved at this point in time. I think they thrive on having this constant back and forth.
Well, we had attorneys for the school district say they're not satisfied. They accepted this, but they're not satisfied. So how long do you think it'll be before these school districts, a couple of which are in Wyandotte County, renew the suit?
Well, let's think about this in one word: inflation. How will inflation affect what is a fixed amount, that is 90 million additional? How will that 90 million look in outlying years? We know that it's going to suffice, or we believe it will for now, but how long will it be before we need to look at the costs of inflation for looking at risk and other variables that we need to ensure adequate and suitable education?
Do you see
for all?
any chance that Democrats and Republicans could craft an amendment that would say school finance is based on pick a percentage of what income the state is expected to receive in any given year, and that decision would be final?
I know other states have done that. In fact, they may do that in Missouri, where it's
I
a
think
certain
maybe
percentage.
Missouri does that.
Certainly, and I don't know if we're going to reach that point at this point. We pride ourselves in Kansas that our schools are competitive. I'm very proud that one of the #1 high schools in the country, Sumner High School, is in my district in KCK. And I don't know if we want to have a cookie-cutter approach based on what the economy is doing in our state that would then be a trickle-down to what—
Well, but you know, here's the problem. I talked to lots of state legislators and a former governor and a future governor, and I would ask them all, so how much money do the schools need? Mm-hmm. And not any of them can answer that question, because no one seems to know. Mm-hmm. It's based on a court decision, based on a nebulous clause in the state constitution. Wouldn't it be better to nail it down and say 25% or 30% or whatever of anticipated revenues go to schools?
If we're willing to say that we no longer feel that education is the primary function of state government and that our school children are the most important thing that we have, then certainly we can tie that into that. But I think that whatever income the state has from our state general fund, the prime objective would be to ensure that our state is not only competitive in a world economy, but also the highlight of our children.
Are there any Republicans in the state legislature from Wyandotte County?
Not that I'm aware, and if they are, we will do what we can.
And the
to make sure that
legislature is
doesn't remain.
controlled by the Republicans. Do Wyandotte Countyans get a fair shake from the state legislature?
Oh, indeed we do. We have a good debate, a robust debate, and it's not just because of Democrats or Republicans or conservatives or moderates, but because by and large, we're listening to the issues and the values that are reflected by most Kansans. So we've been relatively
You're active
productive.
in the Democratic Party. Who's your favorite candidate for the presidential nomination?
Wow, at this point in time, I'm prepared to support several of them. I don't have a clear favorite, but certainly they all are making their points. I will say that I'm concerned about the party being too constrained to some of the issues, the outlying issues, to what some would say the far left, and that we don't address the mainstream, as indeed I hope our party will.
You consider
but our
yourself a
candidate-
moderate?
I do.
All right. Good to see you again. Thank you very
good to
much
see
for
you.
coming in.
Appreciate
Come
you
back
having
and
me
see
on.
us. That is Kansas State Senator David Haley. Now let's meet the panel and start a ruckus. Teresa Garza is a former Jackson County legislator. Attorney Laura McConwell is a former 3-term mayor of Mission, Kansas. John Stevens is president and CEO of Port KC, and Denidre Herbert is a journalist with the Sentinel website, a part of the Kansas Policy Institute. Good to see all of you again. A really good-looking panel. It's great to have you with us.
So glad to be here.
As sometimes happens, what the pollsters predict and the pundits proclaim turns out to be wrong. The race for mayor was not close. It was anything but. A first-term 34-year-old councilman, Quinton Lucas, will succeed Sly James as Kansas City mayor after winning decisively against another council member, Jolie Justice. The margin of victory was impressive, roughly 60 to 40%. While Justice outperformed Lucas north of the river, it was not substantial enough to stop his south of the river surge. Aside from the obvious fact that Lucas got more votes than his opponent, what else do you see as a major factor in his victory? And let's start with John.
Sure. Well, I think both candidates, obviously both current council members, they brought a lot to the table. They're both savvy politicians, experienced people, even for their ages. And but what really separated them, I think, is that Quinton came out with just a better general campaign strategy, campaign outreach program, and then he also brought just a better, clearer, more concise message and messages to the voters that I think between the primaries and the general election this week resonated.
Well, Denidre, would it be fair to say that he's more charismatic than she, and you can't teach somebody to be charismatic?
Yes, it would be fair to say that. One thing that I
Would
found...
it be accurate to say that?
Yes, it would be accurate. I thought it was fascinating. I have a lot of conservative friends, which will probably shock all of you to know. My conservative friends on the Missouri side were all huge Quinton supporters. And so I think he was successful at gathering a coalition of people who I don't think probably were his primary supporters.
You know why I think he gathered a coalition of conservative voters is he talks so much about infrastructure and basic services.
Yeah.
And I think that
Absolutely.
is fairly called a conservative point of view. Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, he definitely hit on those points, and I think that looking back and looking at the races that were ran, it sometimes feels like, and a lot of people have stated this, that Jolie was still running a Senate race versus a mayoral race. And when he's putting out things like who's tired of potholes, and she's putting out something about not taking money from big oil, it's not the same thing on the local level.
Yeah.
And so that really kind of, I guess, showed who was leading in regards to wanting to be the representative for the community and the city.
Yeah, I think Quinton spoke to the people. And because I had that even on the Kansas side. There were a lot of my conservative
very
friends
weird.
that were, they were really rooting for Quentin Lucas, and I think he's young. He has a lot of energy. He is not scorched earth. He's willing to work with people. I mean, he's going to work with Jolie and the other council people that were elected. And he really sent a message that the people that are the stakeholders, meaning the voters in Kansas City, want to hear. They want to hear that somebody's going to think about them. And so the potholes and safe neighborhoods and affordable housing, and those are all things that are really important to them. And I think a lot of the voter base are tired of hearing about the big projects and they're tired of hearing about the big
They just
projects.
want to get back to
They
basic
want safe
services.
neighborhoods.
They want back to basic services.
They want
John,
basic services.
there will be 6 new members on the city council, 6 people returning to the city council, a mayor who is returning to city government. So do you think anything significant is going to change in the next 4 years? Will the streets be better? Will the homicides be fewer? Will jobs dramatically expand?
As every mayor elected in the history of mayorships knows, you have to tackle all of these. You can't focus on just one issue and try to solve it. It is a multitude of issues. I do think progress can continue to be made. I think we were lucky in Kansas City with having 2 mayoral candidates that were both really at their heart policy wonks. And that is a good thing in the Kansas City government with 12 council members, that you're going to have a real mix of interests, a mix of diversity, a mix of people coming with their own strategies for solving the problems of Kansas City. And I think Mayor-elect Lucas is going to, I really believe that he'll be able to come in and build coalitions and move some agendas forward. And I think we should look forward to that.
What was question 1, Teresa?
Question 1, dealing with incentives.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
Oh, let me rephrase. What was the outcome of voting on question 1?
It got voted down. So again, I mean, kind of what you said, like talking about the big projects, why there's kind of a disconnect, right? People are complaining about big projects, but yet this got voted down.
Yeah,
because people understand you still have to have growth. You still have to be able to bring jobs into a community. You still need affordable housing.
That's right.
So you still need those things. It's just how do you do it and have
it was
a better
an arbitrary
portfolio.
cap that didn't give flexibility for different areas or different types of projects. And also, I think people in Kansas City have heard they're tired of governing by petition initiative in Kansas City. They want their elected officials to
I
govern.
knew you knew, Teresa. Here are some words I never thought I would say on Ruckus, hear them on Ruckus, or hear or say them anywhere else ever. The Kansas Supreme Court has decided the state's K-12 public school system is adequately funded. Now, this will at least temporarily end the battle between several state school districts and the state legislature over how much is enough. Apparently, the answer is well in excess of $4 billion a year, a sizable chunk of the state's annual budget. And there is this caveat: the High Court will continue to oversee the case, apparently to make sure the legislature meets its commitment. As someone who has followed this case with a great deal of interest for a long time, Denidre, what do you make of this outcome?
Well, I don't think anybody was shocked by it. I think the Kansas Supreme Court has proven over and over and over again that they're a political entity, and they've made a political decision, I think, sticking a finger in the air and going, okay, we need to stop now for a while, but we're going to hold on to it. You know, this lawsuit was filed within a few days of Governor Brownback being elected. He was governor-elect when this lawsuit was filed, and I think they're going to hold on to it till there's a Republican in office and then start punching the next Republican in the face with another lawsuit or the continuation of this as soon as possible. This is a political decision based on nothing but a subjective opinion of, okay, now it's adequate. Just now. Because,
all right, John.
Well, I don't know about that.
Let me ask John this, and then I'll ask some of the others on the panel. Who can claim a victory after this? The schools, the GOP legislators, Governor Kelly, the Democrats, none of the above, all of the above?
I don't think anybody can claim a victory. I think that it's settled, a cloud is lifted, and that's a good thing for the state of Kansas, because honestly, public education in Kansas has been one of the top hallmarks of recruitment, retention, and the reason that Kansas has succeeded in the ways that it has. So lifting that cloud for however long that lifts and continuing to put pressure on the legislature to continue to fund education and not make big cuts, I think that's important and it's beneficial. So I don't know that anyone wins or loses, but I think it's a cloud is lifted.
Laura, does this end the talk by Republicans of a constitutional amendment to take away from the state Supreme Court the authority to deal with school finance?
Probably not among some Republicans, but one of the things that causes me some concern is the focus on just talking about money, because some of the things in the Supreme Court opinion is they want to talk about what the actual effect is on the children and what we can do, what's happening in the classroom and with the educational system, which to me should be the focus, as opposed to constantly saying, well, how much money, how much money, how much money, which is why the Supreme Court kicked it out before, because they said, okay, we're just going to put this money in the pot, and is that enough? And the Supreme Court said, no, you need to tell us why, and what the effect on the children are going to be. And so I really hope that this gives us a breathing opportunity to kind of turn the conversation around to talk about our kids.
So I would say that, like, the people that win are the kids and the parents that were advocating for this and the teachers.
Do they win, though, if there are people who said there are going to be 5,400 new teachers and that doesn't look like it's going to pan out? Do they win if outcomes don't improve? Can we call it a victory for kids?
Which is why the Supreme Court still wants oversight, because they want to make sure that they are going to carry through on the
What do they know about? What do they know about?
No different than what is a legislature.
But this is
know
looking
They're
about.
elected, so we've given them the ability to do
And so
that.
they
But that doesn't mean
need.
they
So
know
our
about
elected
education.
people need to be working together with we have a school board, we have the legislatures, and I think we need to be working on figuring out those outcomes. Because I agree with you. I mean, we could put all kinds of money in and
towards
still not
something.
have good outcomes. And so
Let's
I don't
argue
think
that's what we've
the
been doing
money
for a
should
while
just
now.
be the conversation. It needs to be the whole quality of the education.
Yes. And originally, if you remember, there were two issues at hand. There was adequacy and equity. And now they've resolved the adequacy side, or at least they've
Neither of
determined.
those words are in the Kansas Constitution, by the way. I just want to put it out there every time.
But they're important for the education of the children of Kansas.
And
so
for me, having been in this, my kids were in public school in Kansas, and it caused me some concern that I had at that time when my kids were in grade school. They were going to a half-time nurse, half-time librarian, and I had someone in Neodesha telling me that everybody in the district got horseback riding lessons because they had such excess in their district. And so to me, that's why I think we need to look at, okay, what is the end effect? What are we trying to accomplish? Not just continually throwing money at something.
I guess we haven't resolved this.
It's not going away.
There's been a bit of a brawl at the Jackson County Jail, emphasis on brawl, over the security systems that reject women attorneys wearing underwire brassieres. The system deprived female attorneys of face-to-face meetings with clients, something they say is unfair and potentially damaging to those they represent. Sheriff Darrell Forte and Corrections Director Diane Turner rejected the women's pleas to modify the system. Forte did say he plans to meet with some of the attorneys to discuss potential solutions. As the lone female attorney on this week's panel, I want to ask Laura about her take on this matter, but I will add there is a new development, and that is suddenly and magically out of nowhere, the security system started to work. The women didn't change their undergarments, and the sheriff didn't change the settings on the system. So can you help us understand this?
Yeah, I think that the sheriff and Ms. Turner are digging in their heels. In a lot of courthouses around the metro, when you have an attorney with a bar card, you're allowed to go in and you can take your cell phone in and you can wear your bra that has an underwire. I know Ms. Turner, for dramatic effect, dropped a whole bunch of knives and said, well, these things got carted in a bra, but I would submit that none of them probably came out of a woman attorney's bra.
What about male attorneys?
Maybe male attorneys, because you just don't know. But yeah, the female attorneys know. So I am glad to hear that the censors are doing better, because in Johnson County and federal court and Jackson County and all the other counties around, they don't tip off on the underwire bras.
Now, Teresa, you once were a member of the Jackson County Legislature. If you were still there and this had not been resolved, what might you have done?
I mean, I would, again, look at the security system, because it has to be in the calibration. Even though they're saying they didn't do anything, they had to have done something. I think Ruth Pesk with the Public Defender's Office has said the last instance that she has recorded of it being set off by one of her attorneys was last Friday. So something has happened since everything occurred last Thursday with the rally out in front and so forth, for it to not be being set off because of underwire in your bra. So I think it's interesting, but nobody's saying, nobody's claiming that they did something. It's like miraculously, just suddenly it's not going off anymore.
Denidre, do you think there's any reasonable explanation or excuse for Forte's position on this?
I can't even. Well, I mean, he had a decent argument. They do have to protect everybody, the inmates and the staff, and even the attorneys who come in. But that's a little. You can. I'm sure all of the ladies here have walked through airport security or
with underwire
courthouses or state capitals or city hall, and it never rings. So I almost wonder if some creep didn't turn it up or something. I can't even envision such a situation in which that happens.
Right, that it goes off because of that.
Shouldn't it ring on your earrings and like
your belt buckles? A lot of heels have metal in them.
It just seems like how is that even happening?
Now I've had to take my shoes off before because of the metal frame that's in the shoe.
You know what struck me, John, is that we had a group of women attorneys standing outside the jail. Why didn't they just file a lawsuit to force the sheriff to change the system?
Well, I think that probably could have and should have been the next logical step. But evidently, the magic unicorns that run the metal detectors showed up and fixed this. My bigger concern, I mean, there's certainly the concern of the female attorneys who are officers of the court. I mean, they should be given privileges above and beyond the general public.
We've had background checks. They take our fingerprints.
Right. You have your badges to prove you've passed your bar exam. I mean,
I just think the entire conversation around this seeds distrust in the process, and that's also a very unfortunate occurrence. Just say, we turned it up, we made a mistake, we went too hard with this, we'll correct it, thank you. And I think this would have resolved itself.
It should have.
Yes.
Now, Laura, the attorneys were saying if they don't meet face-to-face with their clients are at a disadvantage. Is that true? Couldn't they talk to them on the phone?
Well, I don't do a lot of criminal work, but you do it on the phone, it can be recorded, and so you lose that attorney-client confidentiality. And so particularly, depending on what your client is charged with, you need to be able to have a face-to-face conversation with your client.
Well, you probably can get a better sense of what your client thinks and is feeling, and your client could get a better sense of
discuss
what you
strategy.
believed would be the most effective way to deal with the problem.
That is. I think
I knew I should have gone to law school.
That's exactly right.
You think that if this had gone on, we would have seen the county executive or the legislature get involved and play a more prominent role?
Absolutely. I think that at a certain point, the legislature and the executive have to step in and say, wait a minute, there's definitely issues going on over here, and how do we help make sure that it gets handled and corrected quickly.
It certainly sounded like that, so I don't think this would have lasted a long time.
Maybe the magic that fixed the system can fix the jail. And won't have these concerns about an inadequate county jail. Okay, let's go over to the soapbox and take advantage of the time we have for Roast and Toast. This is where the Ruckettes have 30 seconds each to cheer, sneer, or leer. And up first today is Denidre.
I want to give a toast to Coleman Hughes. He's a writer and Democrat who testified in front of a House committee yesterday about reparations. And he said, the question is not what America owes me by virtue of my ancestry. The question is what all Americans owe each other by virtue of being citizens of the same nation. He called the push for reparations for slavery a moral and political mistake, and I agree. However, I would like to add, if you have white guilt and would like to send money to someone, I will accept it.
By the way, what happened after he spoke?
People booed. It was terrible. He got booed off the stage, basically.
Oh.
Laura?
So I debated back and forth, but I'm going to give a toast and a shout out to Butch Rigby. Butch is a local attorney and developer, and he was somebody who was against the Proposition 1 that was on the ballot. He has really brought a lot of new life along that 63rd Street corridor and Troost, and he is committed to our community. He puts his heart and money where his mouth is, and so thank you, Butch.
You said you argued back and forth, so only attorneys can do that, right?
There you go.
John.
Sure. I'd like to give a toast to the nearly 67,000 voters in Kansas City, Missouri, who actually took the time to go to the polls to make their vote heard. That's a 17,000 voter increase from the primaries, an increase from the last mayoral election, and I hope it's a trend that continues, because while it's significant increase, it is still woefully short from actually voters having a broad voice across our community.
Just before I go to Teresa, won't that make it necessary for petitions that more people have to sign?
Thankfully, again, a woefully short, small petition initiative threshold now goes to slightly
Because
less
it's based on turnout
woeful.
in mayoral
Yes,
elections. All right,
correct.
Teresa.
So I want to give a toast out to KCADC, the Kansas City Area Development Council, for the work that they do in bringing jobs and bringing companies into the Kansas City area, especially since today we had this discussion about incentives. KCADC is a prime example of what can happen when you are able to bring people to the table and get more businesses into the community.
All right, and finally, here is a toast to Citizens Against Government Waste for issuing this year's Pig Book, outlining examples of wasteful federal spending. There's $65 million to help recover Pacific coastal salmon, $13 million to manage wild horses, $9 million to quarantine fruit flies, and $8 million to purchase fish screens. The Pig Book explains why the federal budget always ends up in red ink. That's Ruckus for this week. We are back next Thursday at 7. Now for the Ruckus and the crew, I'm Mike Shannon saying thanks very much for watching. Good night, and that's all, folks.
Production funding for Ruckus has been provided by gifts from Dave and Jamie Cummings, the Fred and Lou Hartwig family, Peter and Barbara Gattermeyer, the Courtney S. Turner Charitable Trust, John H. Mize, and Bank of America N.A. co-trustees, and by viewers like you. Thank you.